Hey guys, welcome to today's YouTube video, and today I'm going to be explaining to you how to get to 1000 level in chess, which is a pretty big milestone for all the beginners out there. And I feel qualified to talk about this since my brother is around 1000 leveled, and I have seen how players commonly play against him, what ideas generally help him win, and just some principles that will help along the way. And the biggest one that I need to address is for you to castle as soon as possible. And we're just going to show a common example here. And the reason I'm showing the Italian is because it's the most popular opening out there. I think it has the most games in the database, especially for beginners. But there is a big reason why the Italian or even the Ruy Lopez has so many games in the database. And it's because they're very principled. They are super principled openings, and as you may notice, you are developing your kingside pieces first. You're not putting it in front of any pawns. Don't do that. Never put your bishop on d3 in front of the pawn. That just completely kills this bishop. Don't do that. Maybe, but I don't recommend it. Play bishop e2. Just try and castle as soon as possible. I don't recommend bishop e2 because it's passive. It doesn't do as much. Follow opening principles like the Italian or the Ruy Lopez and castle after you develop the knight and the bishop. Basically castle as soon as possible. Don't even think about doing anything else. You're a beginner. You're not qualified to do that. I'm sorry to say that, but just wait until you're at least a little bit better to try and think too deeply about the opening. It is very hard to understand. Even engines have a very difficult time understanding openings, which is why book moves exist. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I want to point out. Please just get castled as soon as possible. Don't think about it too much. Just make sure you don't blunder any pieces. For example, if your opponent plays knight to h5 here, don't blunder your bishop. Just move it back to e2. Knights on the rim are dim, and just get castled next move. Just castle as soon as possible. Don't blunder any pieces. Just please. So many people get in trouble by not castling their king. I'm guilty of that. I've done that over the board, which is even more embarrassing. So please, just get castled as soon as possible. You'll thank me. Just do it. So my next tip is taking pawns toward the center. It is a very principled thing to do. Because pieces in the center are by definition more valuable, and this is shown pretty clearly in the London system. Sorry, I thought my board looked a little bit weird, but I didn't look at it correctly. So bishop to e2. This is a bit more passive of the London system, but I just want to show a quick principle here. So let's say your opponent wastes move. It's not even that bad of a move. It's just drawn here. But let's say you castle and your opponent wants to trade bishops. Now what everyone always tells you to do is when the bishops are offered to trade, just move your bishop back, right? And I think most London players are just gonna be like, I always do that, duh, of course. But I just want to point this out to beginners that maybe don't know, and just an important principle to know. So after bishop takes g3, which pawn do you take with? Now, experienced players, principled players, people that have been playing the game for a little bit are like, duh, obviously I take towards the center, bro. But some people may not know this, so and this video is geared towards beginners, so I want to explain why. So if you take with the f pawn away from the center, first of all, it's a bad move. Because it separates the pawn structure. Notice how the pawn structure is now in two. This is one pawn structure, and this is one pawn structure. They are now separate, but if you do h takes g3, now it is all one big pawn structure. So that's one plus towards it. And if you take the f pawn, you also make a big weakness on e3, which can be immediately exploited, for example, with knight to g4. And now you're attacking, or black is attacking a pawn, and let's say you get annoyed and try and kick the knight away, and now they take your pawn, and now you're losing a full exchange. So simply taking towards the center could have avoided all this trouble. You don't even have to think about moves like knight to g4, just by simply taking towards the center. It's just a principle thing to do. If you don't know that principle, now you do. Try and take towards the center, especially with pawns. And yeah, putting pieces towards the center is always a good thing. So taking towards the center is simply following the principle. Yeah, but another tip just along with that principle is put your pieces in the center. There's a reason that there's a saying, and the saying is knights on the rim are dim. They simply control less squares when they are on the rim rather than in the center. For example, this knight is nicely placed in the center, is controlling some nice key squares. But for example, if I played, let's say, takes, and my opponent waits to move, now I play knight to h4. This isn't a terrible move per se, but now look at your knight is controlling some pretty useless squares. It can't really go anywhere except back where it came from, so it's not really doing anything. That's why putting your pieces in the center is very important. So following that principle is also pretty important. So if you're trying to improve, putting your pieces towards the center and trying to control the center with your pawns and your pieces combined will make your life so much easier and will help you reach the 1000 mark. And on to my next and final point. And this is actually a pretty important one because I see so many beginners violate this rule. Basically, almost every beginner you'll see will violate this rule, and it's actually very important, especially for improving players. So for e5, I'm just going to show a quick example. Nothing too much to explain here. This is just an Italian game, pretty boring opening in my opinion, but it's a very principled opening. And you pinned the knight to the queen, and I titled this in my little classroom here. The title of the section is called Wait for Blunders. And the reason why is because very commonly, let's say you castle, now your opponent gets annoyed with your bishop, they don't really know what to do, so they just play, maybe next move. After I develop my knight, they get annoyed with your bishop and they play h6. Now, if you're a beginner, what is your move here? Do you take the knight or do you move it back? Now, I kind of gave you a hint. If you're listening, I said wait for blunders. So obviously taking wouldn't be very patient. But first of all, giving away a bishop for the knight is not a good trade to do in general if it's not for a specific purpose. So generally you don't want to make this trade in the first place. But also you want to wait and keep the pin. If you trade the bishop for the knight, you're also getting rid of a pin, which is not helpful for your own position. So why not keep the bishop and keep the pin by playing bishop back? It's just a very good move. If you're a beginner, start doing this. Do not trade the bishop for the knight. It will help you improve so much. You'll be able to pressure your opponent and help them blunder. And you notice how I said help them blunder? You help them blunder by waiting for them to blunder. So for example, if your opponent doesn't know what to do there and they just move their bishop to get their pieces towards the center and try and develop like normal, hey, you can play knight d5. And guess what? Now there's so much pressure on the pin that it's almost impossible to stop either winning a material or significant damage to the pawn structure around the king side. And if you don't know how to exploit that, you can just look up some attacking videos. There's plenty of resources for attacking, and I'm not going to go into too much depth about that, simply to keep the length of the video down. But for example, in this position, you already completely winning except for one move, and the move is g5. But honestly, I think I would much rather have this position than, let's say, back here, you trade, and now you have this position, and look, you don't even have a pin. And look, the king side is now safe for black. They can develop much easier, and you don't have a super clear plan, which is another reason I don't like the Italian for beginners. You should play c3 and try to play for d4 here, which I personally think is hard for beginners to see. You may have different opinions, but I don't care. But yeah, that's why I recommend don't trade the bishop for the knight if you don't have to. Just don't. There's no reason. If you don't have to, keep the pin, keep the bishop. But I would much rather have this position where first of all, the top move is knight takes and just sacrifice here because this pin is absolutely dominant, and this actually wins material by 4 since there's no way to protect the knight. So knight takes d5 is the top move, sacrificing the queen. But that's a bit complicated. I'm not going to go into that. Sacrificing isn't very principled, so I can't recommend it. But even if you play something very simple in this position, like bishop g3, your position's equal. And guess what? You're going to play h4 next turn, exploiting the pawn structure around the king, and you're going to attack, creating great practical chances for yourself, which is very important as a beginner. Practicality is the top priority. You're not necessarily looking to play the best moves. I know that may be shocking to say, but playing for practical moves is much more important as a beginner rather than trying to play absolutely perfectly, like a computer, which most humans are just terrible at doing. Even like top grandmasters cannot play like computers, so why should beginners who are just learning the game be able to do the same? Play for practical choices, try to weaken the king's side. It's just a very nice thing to do and creates a lot of practical chances, especially for beginners, especially when you're attacking. So yeah, I'd much rather have this position. And guess what? If they don't find g5, like, I don't know, they do something random because they don't know how to defend, guess what? Now you have bishop takes f6, and now guess what? You can play queen d2, and you will already have great attacking chances. You can play knight out, knight to f5, and your position is great. The computer loves this position, and you are going to win so many games by getting this position. Just trust me, it makes your life so much easier keeping pins and waiting for your opponent to blunder. And waiting for your opponent to blunder can be used in so many situations. If you don't know whether to trade or not, ask yourself, why am I trading? Is there a reason why I'm trading? And if there's not a good reason, most of the time, you shouldn't trade. Just wait for your opponent to blunder, because I've seen that so many times in my brother's games where the opponents just don't know what to do and they blunder a full piece. I'm serious. You just wait and they'll blunder. They don't know how to play chess like you, but guess what? Now you know more principles and you know what to do better during the game, like taking toward the center. Don't trade if you don't have a reason to, and castle as soon as possible, and you will immediately have an advantage over your below 1000 rated opponents, because hey, guess what? They don't know how to play chess. They're not that good. But yeah, just follow these simple principles and you can easily attain 1000. You can do it. It's a very attainable goal for anyone. I believe anyone can get 1000 easily if they just put a little bit of effort in. But thanks for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.